Welcome back. We are doing another pantry meal for the Pantry Challenge. It's Thursday, July 23rd. And on the menu today was ham and autumn toasted couscous salad. So I had said I had a new recipe to share with you from a cookbook, and that cookbook is the Pumpkin Cookbook. So this I got from Azure Standard, but I'm certain it could probably be found on Amazon, maybe in certain bookstores. So if it's on Amazon, I will link that down below. Of course, I will provide my Azure link as well. It's pretty often that when I get an Azure order, I will have 1 or 2 books on order. I really only get Azure orders 2, maybe 3 times a year at this point. And so I just like to check out some of the new books that they have. They're not always cookbooks. I've gotten books on other types, other topics before too. But I figured this fall, what better way to use up the pumpkins that I got from my garden? I had intentions in growing a ton of pumpkins, and unfortunately just did not come to fruition for me this year. If you followed my journey throughout the summer, I pretty much dubbed it the garden that almost wasn't, and that's okay. Next year's a new year, and I'll certainly get more use out of this book at that time. But I did, gotta find it. So my neighbor gave this to us from his garden. He doesn't know what variety it is. He thinks it's likely a crossbreed between 2 things that he grew. And so he asked if we wanted to try one, and we said sure. Now, whatever this is actually was a variety that was ready much sooner than a typical pumpkin would be ready. So I've had this for a little while. There is a little spot on here that I don't know how surface level it is. So once I cut open the pumpkin, the squash, whatever this is, I may determine that I can't use it. It feels good. It doesn't feel soft. All indications tell me it's still okay, besides the one spot on here, somewhere on here. So I don't even know where it is anymore. Oh, it's down here. So we will see. My plan B, if I can't use this actual pumpkin, I have butternut squash from my garden. I will just use that instead. So what's involved in the autumn toasted couscous salad? So if you're not familiar with couscous, from my knowledge anyhow, there's 2 varieties. There's a pearled couscous, and then there's the really teeny tiny couscous. I don't know if this has a type of Moroccan style pasta. So I don't have pearled couscous, and I actually thought I did. There we go, using things up, in the pantry. So I'm just going to use that instead. I could substitute the pearled barley for orzo. I didn't check to see. In fact, I know I have orzo, so I could actually sub it for orzo, but that's okay. I have a lot of ways I can use orzo. Orzo? Say something too many times and you're like, am I saying it right? I have a lot of recipes using orzo, so I would rather try and use this up instead. And so what we need besides pumpkin and orzo, really simple ingredients, especially if you're trying to eat within the season. Doesn't include a ton of fresh ingredients, which is great because I don't have any. We need dried cranberries. It says fresh parsley. Of course, I'm just going to use dried parsley. Olive oil, red wine vinegar, apple juice, red onion. I don't have fresh red onion, so I will use my freeze-dried. And then it says fennel root, which I do not have, and so I'm just omitting that. I'm not trying to find something in its place. I'm sure it really provides such a wonderful flavor. We're just gonna go without. Really what this is doing is providing me some inspiration to have for tonight's dinner alongside the infamous ham slice that we talked about in my pork freezer video when I received my hogs. We collectively agreed that we don't tend to love it due to the process of heating it up tends to dry it out. I was given a tip, I think by a couple of you actually, and so we're gonna try that today and we'll see if that helps. So let's get cooking so that we can actually have dinner at a decent time. Before we do that, I looked over and realized what I had sitting out still as a reminder to let you know. I told you I would be completely honest if I broke any rules of my pantry challenge. And I'm here to tell you with full transparency and honesty, I broke my pantry challenge rule today. So, kind of, sort of, right? So I said, no going out to fast foods, no grocery stores with the exception of my 3 items, all of that. 1 or 2 days a week, I watch our granddaughter. It's like a 10-hour day. I get up before it's technically considered morning, and I feel like I get to my stepson and daughter-in-law's house before it's technically morning time. And I leave in the evening and come home. So I bring my coffee with me, but sometimes girlfriend's tired and she needs a little bit more pick-me-up. And if I'm home, I will make my own iced coffee. Absolutely, 100%, hands down, no issues with that. But I'm not in my own home and I don't have everything accessible to me. So my husband comes and visits us on his lunch to see, of course, the grandbaby, have lunch with me, and I asked him to stop and bring me some coffee. So I did technically break the challenge to some degree. Now, I definitely didn't want to go in and out of drive-thrus for things like this, but really, when I say don't go to fast foods, I'm thinking lunch, dinner, food. For me, for the family, a coffee, I'll consider it breaking, sure, absolutely. I will take full accountability, but I needed the coffee and I'm not going to apologize about it though. So I just thought I'd share that. So let's go get our pumpkin cut up. Okay, so let's see. Oh gosh. I mean, I think it's gonna be okay because this is not easy to cut into. See what kind of condition this is in. Keeping hands away from the knife. I want to see if it's even worth my time. I don't know that it's looking promising actually. Looks kind of dark in there. Oh my goodness, okay. So that's the inside. It really does not feel like it's ripe. I know the lighting in my house is not great for coming across, but I don't know if you can see, it is incredibly pale. It doesn't look meaty. I don't think I'm going to bother wasting my time in using this. I think I'm still going to roast it up and just feed it to my chickens, unfortunately. I don't know. Because I don't know this variety very well, it just doesn't look, I mean, to me, this almost looks like the core of the pumpkin, and like the flesh just was never there. So we'll scratch that. First step was to microwave the pumpkin, or in my case, I am using the butternut squash from my garden. These are the last 2 that I grew. So I'm actually kind of happy that I'm going through what I grew and using things up before they go bad. So they are semi-soft. You don't really want them super soft, and you don't want them cooked through. You're gonna want to have a little bit of a bite with this salad. So I'm gonna set this aside so they can cool down long enough for me to cut out into small bite-sized chunks the squash. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna prepare the couscous. Now couscous is a 1-to-1 ratio. So I'm gonna do 1 cup of water, 1 cup of couscous. The type of couscous I'm using today, I actually can't remember. I'm not super familiar with the pearled couscous. So we'll talk about what I'm using today. The really teeny tiny, really teeny tiny couscous is so small that they cook almost instantly. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get this to a boil. Once it turns to a boil, I'm gonna cut the heat. Then I will take 1 cup of my couscous, put it into the boiling water, put the lid on. You know, I would take it off of your burner. Just let it sit for a little while because it'll cook at that point, and then you can fluff it up. I'm using 3/4 cup water and 1/4 cup apple juice because there was apple juice in the recipe. I don't want it super sweet. The original recipe called for 1.5 cups of apple juice, but according to, I'm sure, the amount of couscous that's being used, and that had it basically cooking in that apple juice. So I just cut it. It'll be a little bit sweet. It'll lend the sweetness that I'm sure we're after. So I'm gonna get this to a boil. Let my squash cool down. Okay, my water and apple juice are at a boil. I'm going to throw in the couscous. Cover it. Take it off the heat, and we'll worry about it here in a little bit. If I could be completely honest with you, my recommendation would be, whether you're using pumpkin or some sort of a squash, doesn't matter. My recommendation would be to peel it, cube it, whatever size that you of course want, and then roast it. I'm questioning how delicious this is going to be. Now we do kind of toss it around in a skillet with some olive oil and then just a little bit of seasonings, and then it'll come together basically as like a salad. But I can tell you right now, if we like this side dish, and I've had things, you know, like it isn't anything extravagant by any means. It's very simple even in the ingredients, but if we like it enough that we would want it again at some point, that's what I'm going to do, and that's what I'm going to recommend for you as well. Microwaving it, you know, I don't know. I don't think that does anything for me. So let's move on. All right, I'm gonna get my skillet hot. I'm gonna add in some of my olive oil. This is probably an area that you could use extra virgin olive oil if you like as well, but when it comes to sauteing and putting heat to anything, I always just use pure olive oil. If I'm gonna use an oil like this anyhow, it's just pure olive oil or avocado oil. I saved my extra virgin for fresh salad dressings that won't have heat applied to it. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get the butternut squash seasoned here. I'm gonna do some salt, pepper, got 2 lemons still left in my fridge from the holidays that are definitely looking like they need to be used up, so I'm actually gonna do just a little fresh lemon over this. And I just want to saute it for a few minutes to make sure some of the more raw portions are kind of cooked through, of course. But it's going to be just a couple minutes. Since I'm using freeze-dried items in this dish, I am going to add those items now to the pot that the couscous cooked in. There's still going to be a lot of moisture in there, even though it's all absorbed, of course, but there's still, with the steam and everything going on, there's enough moisture that if I add my freeze-dried items now and all of those ingredients, that they will plump up, hydrate, and be ready for when the dish is actually ready. I don't want to hydrate them in a separate bowl of water and then add them. It'll definitely provide better flavor if I just do everything in that dish. All right, so you can see that the couscous basically just fluffs right up. Onions. I'll give the actual recipe down below, of course, with measurements if you want to make it exactly the way that, recipe states. But of course, since I'm improvising with some items, I'm just gonna eyeball to how I think our family would enjoy it. And do the cranberries. All right, I have my home preserved parsley that I'm going to add. I'm gonna go ahead and use the rest of this lemon. That's not part of the recipe, but I know it'll brighten the dish up quite a bit. We're gonna add a little bit of the red wine vinegar, some salt, pepper, and squash. So to cook the ham slice here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some water here put into my skillet. I'm going to bring this up to a simmer, and like a really hot simmer, not a boil or anything. Once that happens, then I'm going to put my ham slice in there. I'll cover it, turn the heat off, let it get warmed through, and just before serving, I'm going to get my pan really hot, empty the water, and just do it like quick sear. Boom, boom. It'll be warmed through. The sear will provide, I don't know, I guess just that taste, that look that we all want and desire. Lock in hopefully some of that moisture that we want, because what we were having problems with when we were cooking these is they dry out and then they're just not as good. So people, you all recommended to add some water, whether it's in the oven or on the stove top. And so I'm just going to do the stove top today because everything else has been such a quick process. So we'll see how that turns out. So finishing touches here on the couscous salad, I'm going to drizzle some extra virgin olive oil. Going to use the rest of that lemon. Oh, geez. Squeeze over. And that is done. This is intended to eat either warm or cold. So whatever your preference is, of course. This is coming to a simmer, almost a boil. So I'm going to turn that down. Get it covered, and I'm just gonna let it sit there hot until we're ready to serve. I'm nearing the time where everyone starts getting home and it gets loud, which is why towards the end of my dinner videos I tend to not have sound because there's chaos going on everywhere. So I do want to bring you back here quickly though to let you know what I think about this. I tasted it. Now I'm going to just be honest. I obviously did not follow the recipe exactly. I made an abundance of changes. Some could even argue, is it really even the same recipe? Okay, so let's keep that in mind. But I will tell you that I don't find anything marvelous about it. You know, I could probably come up with something on my own and be a little bit happier with it. I think recipes always deserve a second attempt, and of course, I think at some point we'll make it exactly how it was intended to be made. I think it's okay. It's delicious. We'll eat it tonight, and then I'll probably even have some for my lunch tomorrow, and my husband too. No big deal. I just don't want to present this to you like this a marvelous type of a meal. It's just okay. It's just okay. And again, I think if I roasted the squash first, whether it's pumpkin or actual squash, I think that could do something because that would have a ton of flavor in itself. I think I could add a little bit to the so-called dressing. Yeah, so that's what it is. Just waiting on people to get home in T-minus 2 minutes probably, and then I'm going to get this seared up and we're going to plate up our meal. My nephew is not going to eat this. No. So for his side, basically what I'm going to do, not even for his side, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this ham, I'm going to use some of the ciabatta rolls that I have, and I'm just going to make a ham and cheese melt type of sandwich for him. We had steaks and potatoes last night for dinner, so my daughter will have a leftover baked potato. In case she doesn't like this, there is a leftover baked potato. And she'll have some ham, and I'm probably gonna crack open a jar of green beans and quickly heat that up. And that's dinner for tonight. So again, it's Thursday. Friday's dinner, I'm not going to be home at dinner time, so I generally either do leftovers or like tomorrow, it's soup and sandwiches. So my husband and whomever's home can kind of fend for themselves, warm up whatever they want. So I'm not going to be here to film or show dinner. It's nothing exciting anyhow. And then Saturday, we're having fried chicken. May or may not bring you along for that, we shall see. But if not, I will see you next week for another week of pantry meals. Let me know what you're having for dinner. Let me know what you're doing for dinner over the weekend, because I've not made my menu plan yet for next week and I need some ideas. How is the pantry challenge going for you, and did you bust your pantry challenge rules in any way? Let me know, because we just found out, obviously I did to some degree. We did go to the grocery store, but my husband came home with a case of pop, 2 gallons of milk, and 4 things of heavy cream. So we're doing good in that department. So I will see you again very soon in my kitchen. Take care.